Well, it's also necessary to journalists. Okay, one of the reasons people want to be journalists is so that they can feel independent, so they can feel that they're telling the truth, and so they can feel that they're not being manipulated. And investigation is a way to do that. It's a way to give you back your power as a journalist. A second function is that it gives power back to people, okay, by giving them information that can change their lives, that they can use. And finally, it keeps the people running the society honest. I don't mean that they're all liars, but I mean that the people running organizations have the responsibility, above all, to defend their own organizations. The interests of the organizations may not be identical with the interests of the society, and somebody has to be watching. Being an investigative journalist is a way to live the dream of being a journalist. The dream of being a journalist is that you find the truth, that you tell stories that change the world. Okay, I mean, personally, I think the world is a mess, and I think it's filled with unnecessary suffering. And if you're an investigative journalist, you can imagine, and sometimes you can show yourself, that you're helping to relieve some of that suffering and to, make the world a little less messy. So this is, a really noble undertaking, and if you happen to like telling stories as well, then, you can have fun doing it. First of all, you have to deal with a lot of hostility, okay? I mean, some people don't like what you're doing. Many people do not trust journalists in general, and arriving and saying I'm an investigator doesn't tell them anything. You have to spend a lot more time with people. But I think the difficulties of the profession are largely exaggerated. The difficulties aren't so much physical, they're not the resources. That's a question of doing the job effectively and having good processes, okay? Which, by the way, we talk about in this manual we just published, Story-Based Inquiry. We do go into that. Yeah. The difficulty is mainly psychological. I mean, a lot of investigations are about things that have gone wrong. In the American expression, a train that went off the tracks. And when you spend a lot of time dealing with people who are making the world worse, either through their error or through design or through avarice, whatever, okay? When you spend your time with people like that, it's very wearing. And when you spend your time with victims, who are usually the first people to talk in an investigation, the people who've been hurt, you absorb part of their pain. So, that's the primary difficulty, honestly. For all the rest, you can take precautions or you can find solutions. But, you have to deal with the psychological repercussions. You have to deal with the psychological repercussions of having people who are in pain or people who are a little bit crazy around you. Do something that Mark Kramer was talking about, okay? I write my emotions down in my notebooks. Okay, that's the single most effective technique I've found. You turn it into material. You write down the things you're feeling, the crazy thoughts that pass by your head, all of this. This is important information, especially when you put it up against what was happening around you at the moment you had those feelings. Something serves as a stimulus to those feelings. So what is it? What's causing the feeling? And you note it, and you discover quite a few things. Okay? And also that gets the feeling out of you. It makes it objective material that you can then utilize in a narrative or in a story or just in understanding what you're dealing with. For example, if you're in a room with two groups of people, okay, and you're drawn to one group rather than the other, why? What are you feeling toward those two groups? What does that feeling tell you about who they really are? This can be very important information. So one of the reasons for the crisis of the media is that the content got poorer. I mean, if you're asking people to pay for content, either with their attention or with their money, you have to give them something. And over the last 20 years or so, as the content of the news industry got thinner, there was no differentiation between the free product that came along when the internet arrived. I mean, why are you going to pay for something that you can get for free? It's not just newspapers giving away their articles on the internet. It's the fact that, you know, when you read a so-called quality newspaper or you read a free newspaper, very often there isn't much difference between the two. And the reason is that the quality newspapers had less staff to do the job. They'd gotten rid of their capacity. They'd gotten rid of their best people. And since they were getting rid of their best people, and since they were cutting their wages, and since they were making the job less interesting, talented people went someplace else. The level of recruitment went down.